Welcome to Recap King. In this video, we will explain in time. This movie tells the story of the future where people stop aging after 25 and need to buy time to live. The rich become immortal while others cease to exist. So, a man is on the run with a hostage in a desperate bid to survive. Will he succeed in carrying out his mission in the end? Let's find out in Time. In Time was set in 2169, at which time people are genetically engineered to stop aging on their 25th birthday, and when a one-year countdown on their forearm begins. When it reaches 0, the person times out and dies instantly. Thus, the time has become a universal currency, transferred directly between people or stored in time capsules. Rich people can have a lot of time and live hundreds of years. But the opposite happens among the poor, who even have to work hard just to prolong their own life. Several major areas called time zones exist. Dayton is the poorest, a manufacturing ghetto where people rarely have over 24 hours on their clocks. In New Greenwich, people have enough time to be essentially immortal. The film begins by showing a man named Will Salas, a 28-year-old Dayton factory worker, who lives with his 50-year-old mother, Rachel, but looks physically the same age as her son because she stops aging after she turns 25. Both work hard to make ends meet, and most importantly to prolong their lives. They work to get paid in the form of time, which can extend their life and be used as a means of payment. When it's payday, the time will be transferred using a special tool, where they just need to bring their left arm close to the tool and the time will be automatically transferred. When Will finally arrives at his workplace, he sees some of his co-workers making time bets similar in mechanics to arm wrestling. They just need to put their right hand under someone's right hand if they want to take that person's time. And conversely, if we want to give our time to other people, then we only need to put our right hand on that person's hand. After work, Will goes to a bar to meet his friend, a man named Boral, who shows Will a rich man named Henry Hamilton who has 100 years. Seeing this, Will then approached the man and warned him to get out of there immediately because being in Dayton is very unsafe for anyone who has as much time as Henry. Not long after, a group of criminals who often rob other people's time, known as the Minutemen, came to Henry and intended to steal Henry's time. Seeing this, Will did not just stay silent and rushed to help Henry, then took him away from there. When he was safe, Henry asked Will why he was helping him. Will replied that he just didn't like the actions of 40s and his Minutemen who often took other people's time and committed acts of violence that were very disturbing for the people there. Henry, who has 116 years but is tired of living, reveals to Will that people in New Greenwich hoard most of the time, constantly raising prices to make the poor suffer and eventually die. Seeing Will's sincerity and willing to help him selflessly, Henry decides to transfer all but 5 minutes of his time to the sleeping Will, then time out by falling off the bridge before Will can stop him. Afterward, Will visits his friend Boral, who warns him not to have much time in Dayton, and gives him 10 years, 1 year for each year of their friendship, before seeing his mother leave for New Greenwich together. However, Will's mother, Rachel, who had just come home from work, finds out that the city bus fare has increased from 1 hour to 2 hours, and Rachel, who has used all but 90 minutes of her time to pay off a 2-day loan, is short on bus fare for back to Dayton. The uncaring driver forced Rachel to run back to Dayton. With no one willing to give her a little time, Rachel had no choice but to run as fast as she could back to Dayton to prolong her life. On the other hand, Will, who had been waiting for his mother's arrival at the bus stop, seemed so worried because he had not met his mother. Will, who had a bad feeling that his mother was running out of time, then rushed to fetch his mother. However, Will is a few seconds late to save his mother. Rachel finally timed out and breathed her last in Will's arms. Heartbroken and angry, Will vows revenge for his mother's death by taking the people of New Greenwich for everything they have. The following day, a man named Raymond Leon, the 75-year-old leader of a unit of police like timekeepers, and his men find Henry Hamilton's body and conclude that Henry has been murdered and all his time has been taken. Raymond decides to investigate Henry's death further. Meanwhile, Will finally arrives in New Greenwich to avenge his mother's death of an arbitrary rule that only benefits the rich. Will finally set foot for the first time in New Greenwich after passing several checkpoints and depositing a year's time as a requirement to enter New Greenwich. Elsewhere, Raymond, who checked the CCTV cameras around the bridge, found Will's figure caught on CCTV cameras. Raymond then suspects that Will has robbed and killed Henry Hamilton. Meanwhile in New Greenwich, Will decides to go to the casino and play poker to take time from the rich people there. Will has won several times, so he immediately attracts the attention of many people, one of whom is the 110-year-old time-loaning businessman Philippe Wise, who comes to the casino with his daughter, Sylvia. While playing poker, Will nearly ran out of time but won for over a millennium in the perfect gamble. After the big win, Sylvia then invites Will to a party held at her house. To mingle with the other rich people in New Greenwich, Will bought a new sports car and went straight to Weiss' house right away. Once there, Will invites Sylvia to dance with him, making Sylvia smile, but makes her parents look uneasy because they don't know Will as a New Greenwich citizen. After spending a romantic moment together offshore, Will and Sylvia return to the party, and at the same time, Raymond finally arrives and arrests Will, who insists that he is innocent and not involved in Hamilton's death. Instead of proving Will wrong, Raymond confiscates all but 2 hours of Will's time, explaining that it doesn't belong to Daytonians like Will, and the system has set it that way. When Raymond and his men are caught off guard, Will then tries to escape and takes Sylvia to Dayton as a hostage. Will, who was dreaming at the time, accidentally stepped on a mine which made the car he was driving roll over to the side of the road. Forties and his Minutemen who witnessed the incident then ambushed them and took most of their time, especially Sylvia, and left each of them 30 minutes. Knowing that their time has been robbed, Will tries to get time back from Borrell, but his wife, Greta, tearfully explains to Will that Borrell spent his time drinking until he died. With less than a minute, Will rushed to the jewelry store, where they finally managed to earn a day each by selling Sylvia's expensive earrings. Will then calls Sylvia's father to demand a ransom of 1,000 years to be paid to the Time Mission for those who are desperate. However, Wise becomes more concerned with his precious time and making it immortal than paying the ransom that Will wants, even if that time is for his daughter. When Wise refused, Will ended up letting Sylvia go anyway. Raymond succeeded and was about to shoot him, but Sylvia, who saw this, then shot Raymond in the arm. Will gave Raymond enough time to survive, at least long enough for his men to find him. Will and Sylvia then steal Raymond's car and rush to escape because they become the most wanted fugitives in the whole city after the shooting. Sylvia finally realized that her father was more concerned with his precious time than his own daughter's life. Therefore, Will and Sylvia are committed to ending a system that harms the poor and benefits the rich by robbing Wise Time Bank in Dayton. They both do this so that the time system goes awry and the rich people of New Greenwich can feel the same anxiety and panic as the poor people of Dayton who have to work hard just to prolong their lives. Will and Sylvia then give the extra time capsules to those in need but soon realize that they can't change anything significantly, as prices are being raised more quickly to compensate for the extra time for the mess that Will and Sylvia have caused. Long story short, Will and Sylvia then stay at a hotel and rent the entire building to hide their whereabouts. But apparently, this was discovered by a man who wanted to stay at the hotel, who then recognized Will and Sylvia. Shortly afterward, Forties and his Minutemen urged people to tell who had given them the time capsule. The man who wanted to stay at the hotel then told Forties about Will and Sylvia, who gave out time capsules for free to all citizens and where they were hiding. Long story short, Forties and his Minutemen then ambushed them and snatched the time capsule they had. Before killing the two, Forties then challenges Will to a time-consuming arm wrestling fight. But Forties orders his men to point a gun at Will and kill him if he wins. At first, Forties was able to outperform Will. But then, Will grabs the gun hidden at his feet, kills Forties' henchmen and takes Forties' time until he times out. Will and Sylvia then decide to rob Wise' vault, where there is a time capsule owned by Wise. To carry out the plan, Sylvia then went directly to her father, while Will disguised himself as one of the security officers. Will, who managed to point a gun at Wise's head, then threatened him to open the safe and was very surprised to find out that the time capsule possessed by Wise reached a fantastic number, namely 1 million years. With that much time, the deaths of Will's mother and the poor people of Dayton could have been prevented if rich people like Wise had not hoarded the wealth and time they had. However, Wise said if 1 million years were distributed among the poor, it would cripple the system because to control the human population, they needed the system. Even though the system that Wise and the other rich people had implemented was one-sided and favored the rich more, the system proved successful in controlling the human population, which would likely fight over time and the situation would become chaotic. Because Wise had mentioned Rachel, an angry Will then pointed a gun at Wise and said there shouldn't be immortal. When Will and Sylvia are about to return to Dayton to share the million years of time, Raymond then chases after them, causing an incident that leaves Will and Sylvia cornered. Will and Sylvia didn't run out of their minds, where they then shared that 1 million years of time with a little girl, which then made the citizens flock to the little girl, so Will and Sylvia could escape from Raymond's pursuit. But Raymond did not just give up, and managed to catch up to Will and Sylvia. However, Raymond neglected to download his daily time slot, so he finally times out. Will and Sylvia also almost time out but survive by taking Raymond's time from his car. After all that Will and Sylvia had done, the time system finally crashed, and through the news broadcast on television, it was seen that the factory in Dayton was closing as everyone had enough time and left their jobs. Even Daytonians flock to New Greenwich to settle there. After seeing the consequences of his obsession with Will and Sylvia, Raymond's partner, a man named Yeager, orders the timekeepers to return home. Meanwhile, Will and Sylvia decide to head to the bigger time bank, still trying to break the system. The moral that can be learned from this film is never to have a greedy nature and likes to oppress weaker people, because through this film, we are also shown how rich people only think about their own profits. Thus, they ignore the welfare of others, even not caring at all about the lives of others, and all of that is rooted in the greed and selfish nature that is nurtured and rooted in oneself. Therefore, develop a caring nature for people who suffer more than us so that we do not become selfish and greedy people.